what's Einstein got to do with diversity? So Einstein once said that if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid. I find that really powerful, and I think that this image, actually, I know it's quite difficult to see it, but I think it's a great demonstration of how important it is for us, the corporate and the business sector, to create level playing fields where everybody, including those with neurodiversity, can maximise on their potential. How do we, the corporate and the business sector, enable our neurodiverse staff to utilise their amazing skills? And also, why is it so important that we empower people with neurodiversity to maximise on their potential? To start with, we bring a hell of a lot to the table. We see things differently, we do things differently, our experience is different, and that is incredibly valuable and it's very, very powerful. So, I've worked in the corporate sector for the last 15 years. I've worked with some of the biggest corporations out there, JP Morgan, Accenture, you name it, I've probably been there. And working in the tech space as a recruiter has really shaped the way that I think about diversity and how important diversity is, because we have always been at the forefront of DEI, diversity, equity and inclusivity. I've seen how the tech world has basically impacted diverse hiring, and it's really taught me that a 15-page manual instruction is never good enough, and that because my style is unorthodox, I come up with very unconventional solutions. And ladies and gentlemen, it turns out that the tech world especially are really interested in those solutions. Why are some of the biggest tech companies investing so heavily on diverse hiring? Because they recognise how important it is to create inclusive workplaces where the best ideas and businesses can be born. As a tech recruiter, I have basically been tasked with changing gender balances, disability balances, sexual orientation balances on teams, so that the days are gone where we walk into an office, like Gus was saying, and we see the same types of people, usually men, white men of a certain background. And it's been on this journey, hiring diverse talent and seeing the investment that these tech companies have made in terms of hiring diverse talent, that I've really understood the power that I have as a neurodiverse individual and what I bring to the table. So I'm neurodiverse, and I went through like most of my career and also my education undiagnosed. God and I only know how I graduated from Goldsmiths College with a degree. And to be able to stand here today and talk about some of the experiences and the lessons that I've learned along the way. Well, first of all, how does an individual get through an education system that doesn't cater for the right environments for them to learn, right? And one of the things that we do as neurodiverse individuals is that we come up with some pretty heavyweight coping mechanisms, such as masking or pretending that we understand information when we don't understand what's going on, or we don't have a jiffy, right? Like, how many of you been in a room where somebody's talking and you don't understand what they're like saying, right? I need time to process or prepare for topics or key points before I go into even just like a casual meeting at work, right? Like, I need to keep on going back to information so that I can process it and understand that information. And preparation is really essential for me. And one of the things that I do ask for at work especially is that, you know, if I'm going into a meeting or even if I'm just having a conversation, right, can somebody please just give me a heads up on the key points of the topic so that I can follow threads of conversations that are being had by multiple people, because I, like most, have got ADHD. So, you know, sometimes like there's a lot of stimulation that's going on for me that I'm picking up all at the same time. So I need to learn how to focus my neurodiverse brain and be able to basically simulate that information, right? Having suitable environments, right, where we can actually process that information and where we're in a safe space where we can actually ask for certain criteria that are going to help us digest and absorb information. Time is really key, I think, for a lot of people with neurodiversity, and having like patient environments and understanding ones are really, really important. I think that, you know, humour and social awkwardness really comes into the workplace and characteristics that are built within people that have neurodiversity, because I've had to learn how to laugh at myself, because I've been in some really awkward situations where I've been laughed at, right? And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the first one to get in line for a really good joke, but what we really need to be mindful of is that, look, are we laughing at somebody's invisible disabilities here? And, you know, I really do believe that people with invisible disabilities really do build something that I think is really valuable within the corporate and the business sector, especially as, like, you know, women, which is resilience, right? Like, learning how to be resilient in the corporate and the business sector is such a valuable skill to have. And I definitely believe that I've learned it because, you know, I've been in some really awkward situations where, you know, having to mask, you know, like certain issues that I've had, or just being, you know, seemingly made to feel stupid, like that fish that they're trying to get to climb a tree, right? So, resilience is a really important characteristic, right, for people within the corporate sector. I, as a tech recruiter, have been tasked so many times on, please, can you recruit for me robust personalities that can, you know, handle challenging environments? Well, try being neurodiverse and going through the education system without a diagnosis or having the right environments to cater for your learning, and see how challenging that is, and ask that same person to go into any single boardroom environment, corporate, meet with any senior stakeholder and watch. They will find a way to do it, right? Because they're used to being in uncomfortable situations. It might also not be perfect, but the lesson here is that if we can help support our employees to make even more valuable contributions, how much better would our workplace be? I can tell you that being neurodiverse in these organisations has been extremely challenging. Like, it's been really testing. You know, going back to being in meetings, not understanding what's going on, and not being, I think, confident enough to say, actually, do you know what, like at the early point in my career, I need to have those topics and key points before I go into a meeting, or other details like, you know, we could have some of the meetings that are recorded and have transcripts that we can go back to at the end of the meeting, so that if we're not understanding what the information is, that we have something to go back to basically absorb that information. If you're in a meeting and really an organisation is trying to create an inclusive workforce, what we should be doing is creating an environment where everybody can contribute, whether that be you, I, you know, the person next door, because actually that's where great ideas are born, and that's coming back to why the tech world is investing so heavily on, you know, diverse hiring, because they understand this. Like, you know, it's going on right now as we speak. Like, these tech companies want diverse candidates, and that includes women, women of colour, neurodiversity, sexual orientation, people with disabilities, right? Like, accessibility is a massive, massive area that the tech world, some of the best tech companies are focusing on at the moment. So how to get people with disabilities to engage with tech, right? But that's a little bit of a tangent. So preparation for meetings, key points that, you know, we should be able to ask for before we go into the meeting, right? So water cooler conversations. Like, I honestly, like, I've been in, like, 15 years I've worked in a corporate environment, and I can tell you, I would rather go into the boardroom with Lord Sugar and Karen Brady and be put on national TV than to actually have a conversation with like 2 or 3 people at a water cooler talking about how their day is, or like family, or whatever they're talking about. It terrifies me. I have no idea like how to engage with it, because it's just, it's a part of my neurodiversity. And that makes me come across as quite like socially awkward. So, you know, when I first started out in the corporate sector, you know, at a time where there were no women, and then, you know, women of colour, and then, you know, I had this like neurodiversity that I was masking as well. You know, I always stood out like a really sore thumb, and, you know, going into these like, you know, like water cooler environments, it's like, you know, it was really, really terrifying. And, you know, sometimes it's like it can, that social awkwardness can often come out as being being cocky or overconfident. And there's 2 things here. People either love it when you're cocky, or they absolutely hate it, but it's a really like clear divide on what camp people are going to sit in. And, you know, more often than not, I would be seen as an overly confident woman at work, which actually really impacted, you know, things like self-esteem as well, right? Raising awareness about, you know, things that, you know, we might think only happen to us, right? And like actually talking about it, you know, makes for a better community, right? Like, if like, I'm sure that I'm not the only one that struggles with these water cooler conversations, or just, you know, how was your day, and, you know, not being able to like follow threads of conversations. But just going back to it, I would rather go into the boardroom than have those cool conversations and stand in a line of thousands of people to audition, right? Which brings me to another part of my neurodiversity, which is physical space, like the physical impacts of being neurodiverse, because I have something that's called visual spatial awareness. And it basically means that I have no awareness if I'm standing too close to somebody, right? And it can be really awkward. And ladies and gentlemen, if I am standing too close to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that I like you like that. But then on the flip side, I have no understanding so I can stand too close to another person, but on the other side, I need to have my own space. So if I can stretch my arms out and somebody is within this space, for me, that's too close for me. So that sets off like a little bit of an alarm bell in my neurodiverse brain, which is really like ironic, I understand, right? And it can be really awkward. So I do struggle in terms of like, you know, being in an office environment, and, you know, it proves difficult when, you know, those like spatial boundaries are not in place. I think space is something that is really quite, I think it does affect a lot of people in neurodiversity actually. And one of the ways that I've created space working in a corporate sector has been through music. People in neurodiversity, like I you know, generally do find that there is one kind of correlation, and that is music, right? Like I create my own space through listening to music. It helps my ADHD brain focus on tasks at work, and I can also zone people out in terms of just focusing with no outside distractions. I think that COVID has created an environment for people with neurodiversity to be able to work from home as well, because, you know, sometimes in an office environment, if you have an issue with, you know, like visual spatial awareness, sometimes working next to somebody, or if you have ADHD, you need to focus on the tasks at hand, right? And that's not always really going to happen in a work environment, because, you know, 10 people are coming over to you saying, look, I need this today, I need that, you know, tomorrow, and it can often be distracting. So I actually find that I get a lot of work done at home, but I'm fortunate enough to have a safe space at home. And actually, you know, the reality is that for a lot of people, you know, homes are not safe spaces, right? And I would say that the corporations actually have a responsibility. In fact, I would argue that they have a duty to create that space for anybody that is working in their offices in the office, right? Like they need to be mindful of, you know, they might have like situations at home where they're going to be distracted, or they might not be able to do the work to the best of their abilities. So I really do believe that we as businesses need to start looking and developing training for our people on neurodiversity, and also input support structures to help them navigate their neurodiversity. Whether that means understanding that a 15-page manual just isn't good enough, it's not acceptable for anyone. I don't believe that anybody can really read that amount of information, even if you're not neurodiverse. And just really creating that support structure where we can enable people with neurodiversity to maximise their potential, right? So, you know, I really will go back to Einstein and this image of, you know, a load of different animals, and the teacher basically saying, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. We're all individuals. We learn differently, we think differently. It's okay to be different.